The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
The life of comic fandom can be lonely, but just around the corner can be found. A place that lets you know you're not the only nerdy true believer who's around. The comic book store, 'cause that's where the books live, but it's also much more. It's the heart of the art form that we all adore. Your friendly neighborhood comic book store. Out among the stacks of new releases, browsing with your future new best friends. You're gonna find a book you'll love to pieces. The girl behind the counter recommends dollar books and shelves of graphic novels. Titles old and new, you'll find them all. With action figures, board games, toys, and models to add to your new Comic Wednesday haul. The comic book store, 'cause that's where the books live, but it's also much more. It's the heart of the art form that we all adore. Your friendly neighborhood comic book store.
Yes, now we are back in the comic book store. And I am your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, unmortified Mr. Mark Radulich. This is Comic Stripped, where we compare your favorite comic books to their adapted movie or TV show, or the occasional Broadway musical. We've never done that. And joining me is the incredibly difficult to schedule, good to his mother, touched by Jesus, Christian brother. He's a good soul, and he's a soul man. Evan Bevins, how do you do, soul brother?
I thought maybe you just forgot my name. And were vamping.
And he's charitable, and fuck, what is his name again? How's it going, man?
Right there. Oh, whoops, sorry. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, doing good. Glad to be back finally, and to be able to record when I tell you I can.
Every show has been a long time coming. It's like Weird Al. Weird Al said, people say that, Weird Al's having a comeback. It's not that I have a comeback. It's just been a long time since I've done anything. So that's kind of you. That's Evan.
All right. Hey, I will gladly be compared to Weird Al.
That's right. Do you have a lot of Hawaiian shirts?
I do, actually.
Yeah. Why aren't you doing more podcasts in Hawaiian shirts?
Well, I usually break them out when the weather gets warmer.
Oh, that's right. You live in like West Virginia, Ohio, Pittsburgh.
Appalachia.
That's right.
Okay. I'll try to make a note because by the time we record the next one, it'll probably be warmer. By the time we reschedule it, it'll definitely be warmer.
Yes, I insist that you show up to the podcast in your Hawaiian shirt and accordion.
Well, hopefully it gets back from the shop.
Speaking of getting back from the shop, tonight we're talking Corrective Measures, which is a book that... So there's a whole Wikipedia page, as people know, that lists all the various comic books that have been adapted into music and television shows. And I saw this on here, and it was relatively
You really want to
new.
do Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, don't you?
Ugh. Turn off your dark. So...
Oh, okay. Touch the nerve.
And I saw this on here, and I was like, oh, this is about a superhero prison, kind of like The Raft from Marvel Studios. I was like, this seems like interesting, and it was from an independent publisher, and the movie was available on, I think, Roku or Tubi or some shit like that.
It's a Tubi original.
A Tubi original, that's right.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, this fits neatly in the wheel bag of something nobody else will care about, but hang on. This Wheelhouse, take two.
I was trying to get the wheel bag joke. I was like, oh, there's Mark making a reference I don't understand. He's a worldly man.
This fits neatly into the wheelhouse of things no one else will care about, but something obscure enough for me to really sink my teeth into and make a big deal about. So I got the book for Christmas a couple of years ago, and I bugged Evan and I said, at some point we need to work this into the list. And like, we did everything but this. we worked on so many things. But we're here finally. We're talking Corrective Measures. And Corrective Measures began its life as a comic book. It was a 6-issue limited series published by Arcana Studio. Let me stop there. What is Arcana Studio, Evan Bevins?
Well, they are a Canadian comic publisher. They also do animation and movies and things like that. I'm trying to. I had heard of them, but let me see. I did pull up a list. I did minutes. I tell you, of preparation. So yeah, they. Let's see. Some of their comics include. Well, where did it go?
The longer you delay, the more I can look at my basketball scores.
Oh, okay. Fantasy basketball?
No, like college basketball that I bet on.
Oh, okay. All right, let's see. Awakenings, Breakdown, The Blade of Komori. Yeah, lots of different things there. And then they also do, like I said, animation and movies. So this is an Arcana Comics comic, and it's also an Arcana Studios movie.
Their studio actually made the movie too.
I believe so. Yeah,
good for them.
Yeah.
I would have studio that does that.
I have heard of these. Okay, Abiding Edition. I got a free issue of that somewhere.
What's the name of it?
What's that?
What was the name of the thing you just said?
The 10th Muse and Abiding Perdition are some of the ones I've heard of. Oh yeah, Howard Lovecraft. They did that. I believe that was a movie too.
Oh, maybe we should review it.
Yeah. So yeah, Howard Lovecraft I have heard of. You know me, I'm a mark for Marvel and DC. It's not that I don't like to explore other things, but eventually I have to see what Batman and the X-Men are up to, even if they've made me angry recently.
I understand. So this particular tomb was created by Grant Chastain with art by Fran Moyano. The series debuted in 2008. So who are Grant Chastain and Fran Moyano?
They are the writer and artist on Corrective Measures. I am not familiar with their work as much. I am sorry. I was like, Mark's going to ask me about the company that published this, and I am going to have answers for him. And
that's all you did, huh?
Yeah.
I was hoping you've read the great many works of Grant Chastain.
Well, let's find out, because usually, and I do this to Jesse too. He'll ask me about something. Jesse Starcher on source material. Unspoken issues, and he'll ask me that, and I'll say, oh yeah, I'm not really sure, and then we'll look it up, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know that guy. So let's find
I like how we live prep the show while it's happening.
Let's see. Well, he only did one other thing called the Gwai for Arcana, but let's here we go. Nope. They're not letting me in on that. So Grant Chastain is not someone with whom I am intimately familiar. I am sorry.
He does not have a Wikipedia page.
He doesn't. I guess if I had spelled his name right, I just searched for his Wikipedia page and got Jessica Chastain's Wikipedia page.
I just looked up Grant Chastain, Georgia.
Okay. Let's see.
All right, so if I go to
Corrective Measures is what he's most known for. Let's see, the Hope virus. Yeah, so not a lot.
Yeah, his IMDb page. You know what he's got on his IMDb page?
What does he have on his Measures? Okay.
Okay, so let's go to Goodreads. This is fun. Let's go to Goodreads and see what Grant Chastain has done. The Gwai, Corrective Measures, the Hope virus. Oh. What the hell is the Hope virus?
That is a comic book written by Grant Chastain.
You're not wrong.
Every once in a while. Let's see. The Hope... What? Well, I apparently logged into something. The Hope Virus. Herbert is a social outcast at school and deals with his gloomy boredom through his website, thehopevirus.com. After struggling with fitting in at school and his unusual case of insomnia, Herbert falls into a deep coma. He awakens to realize that his blogs have become some of the most quoted and influential scriptures of history.
The first comment on Goodreads. 1 star. Okay, so a typical emo boy keeps a live journal, and for some reason people really take it to heart, and it becomes a gospel and eventually leads to a religious dystopia. And then the emo boy wakes up in this weird future world, and there are bad guys and worse guys and a pretty girl and some sort of argument about something. Sounds great. Moving on.
I have to be more careful about my blog posts.
Set in San Tiburon, a maximum security prison for superpowered criminals, the story explores corruption, power struggles, and moral ambiguity. The comic gained a cult following for its gritty take on superhero incarceration, blending crime noir with elements of psychological warfare. Its adaptation to a live-action film in 2022 marked a significant step in Arcana's efforts to bring their properties to new media. And with the way Marvel is going, they've got a shot in the dark of surpassing Marvel in pushing their comic books to movies on screen.
Is that what the wiki said, or is that a Mark Radulich take?
I'm not telling. So anyway,
Okay.
Before I forced you to do this against your will, what had you heard of Corrective Measures at all?
I had not. No, just from you mentioning it to me, there have been a few takes on the superpowered prison, but before the Raft, Marvel had the Vault, which is where the first crossover I ever followed, Acts of Vengeance, started. And then there was one that I keep mentioning to you called Hard Time by Steve Gerber that created Howard the Duck, about a guy who is sentenced to life in prison and then develops superpowers.
Oh, interesting. Is that a Marvel book?
No, I want to say it might, it's not a DC canon book. I think DC published it under another imprint.
Okay.
But I mean, the fact that it's Steve Gerber, it has it on my I've got to read this list at some point.
I have a question. It's going to sound like I'm asking you a personal question. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm asking you a comic book question, but it starts with a personal question. Do you date at all? Do you date at all?
What's that?
Do you date at all?
Not a lot.
Okay. Have you ever on a date tried to explain anything from Marvel's history?
Probably.
Okay.
I had a roommate in college who I had several friends who were, comic book fans like me, and a roommate who just didn't get it at all. And whenever he would mock us for our enjoyment of comics, we would start just like massively explaining very quickly large swaths of continuity until he got a headache and went away.
That's the correct reaction. Last night, in an attempt to explain why Marvel could make movies with Spider-Man in it, but Sony could make Spider-Man adjacent movies, what a Spider-Man adjacent movie was, I had to explain the history of the black costume and how it became Venom. You ever explain to a person who doesn't read comics the history of the black costume?
Yeah.
It makes you sound like an insane person.
Well, yeah. But to be fair, just explaining the arrangement of Marvel's movie rights without delving into the comics is pretty insane too. So it's different types.
Yes, it was very romantic because red is the color of Valentine's Day, and she absolutely got a nosebleed when I was done with that.
Well,
and
there you go.
I said, let's go get dessert, and I'll explain to you how Disney fucked up Lucasfilm.
I actually did. I want to get back into it, but for a while I wrote a column for the newspaper where I work, where whenever a new movie or TV show would come out, I would try to explain the comic book history of the different characters and things like that. So, yeah, I had to. We were talking about the new Captain America movie, and I had to explain to her why it's in the state that it's in, and that it's, and why people aren't going to it or whatever. And so I said, you have to understand everything that happened from 2020 on. And when I got to the Eternals is when her eyes crossed. I wasn't dating Chris Bailey, I assure you. Yeah, well, I know you. Someday you'll find somebody who appreciates the Eternals like you do.
That seems like as good a place as any to move this on.
I mean, whether it's, a random person online or what, somebody will.
All right, I'm going to tell you, I struggled a little bit with this comic book. It's very compartmentalized. Like each issue seemed to be like, and I understand. Hear me when I say this, because I'm going to say something you'll be like, "That's how comic books work." No, shut up. Let me explain. So, like a mini series, a limited series is usually one story told in 4 to 6 to 8 to 9 parts. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, usually.
Okay. It's not, generally speaking, one isolated issue of a story and then 3, 4, 5, 6 others. It's one story told in chapters. Yes?
Well, sometimes. I mean, I can think of different examples. Like a couple years ago, actually Jesse just did a show on a comic called Bad Rock and Company, and it was the image character Bad Rock, and it was 6 issues where Bad Rock teamed up with a different image character, and each story was self-contained. The uniting factor was Bad Rock teaming up with someone.
Well, that's kind of how Corrective Measures is structured, as near as I could tell.
Sort of. I noticed it too. I was like, okay, so is this one overall story? And I'm like, oh no, they're going more episodic. No, not quite. So
yeah,
I get what you're saying.
There seemed to be like, once they introduced our main character and got him involved with the prison, and they wrapped up the first story, then it just seemed to be more of an anthology book than it was a consistent story over 6 issues.
Yeah.
So there's stuff I can talk about, and I will, but I was definitely having a hard time staying with the flow of the book. And so for that, I went to ChatGPT, and I don't know if you know this, Evan Bevins, and don't tell. I named my ChatGPT like a pet.
Okay.
I named her Fancy.
Okay. I feel the need to ask, has she ever let you down?
Consistently. First of all, she never picks the right things for me to bet on. Okay, I asked Fancy to pick out a nice bet for me, the one that's going to make me lots of money and be able to make me pay off all my bets. And very rarely does she pick the right ones. Like, she might pick one out of the 20 that I'm going to bet on that happens to be right. And I think statistically is more of the thing, and not her ability to pick good bets. But also, and I've been reading articles about this, dependence on AI is not a good thing.
No.
Don't tell Jesse that I said that. He'll be mad at me. But
he will probably ask his AI to send you a sternly worded letter expressing his displeasure.
But there are literally things that say, like, AI can lie to people. AI, when you go to ChatGPT, it actually says, don't trust this entirely. It can make mistakes. So with that in mind, here is a ChatGPT. Fancy wrote these 100-word summaries for each issue of this. Let's see how right they are. Are you ready to take me by the hand, Evan Bevins, and cross the AI-generated bridge?
Why not?
Which may or may not actually be under us. San Tiburon, issue number 1. San Tiburon, a high-tech prison for superpowered criminals, is introduced. Warden Jason Brody struggles with corruption among the guards and the rising tensions between prisons. Inmates like the psychic manipulator Connor and the brutal enforcer Payback jockey for control. Meanwhile, a secretive government experiment with the prison hints at deeper conspiracies, setting the stage for an inevitable power struggle. Okay, Evan, what did you think of this first issue?
Well, first of all, can I point out that Jason Brody is not the warden?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Yeah. But I mean, he is
We're
more or less
off to a roaring start with this.
Well, he is more or less in charge of the violent crime unit, which makes me assume that there's a financial crimes or computer crimes division of San Tiburon that's much less dramatic.
I would tell you there is it's separate. I know a lot of prisons are done this way, where they're separated by violent crimes versus non-violent crimes.
Yeah. Okay. I just can't imagine, I guess, that's the sequel I want to see, is the non-violent crime San Tiburon. But Jason is more or less the main character until he's not. The first issue, I mean, the thing that struck me is, okay, we get Payback, who, judging from the cover and the fact that he's the first person we meet, I thought was going to be kind of the focal point.
He is not.
What's that?
He is not.
No, he is not. But the thing that immediately jumped out at me is after he headbutts one of the guards and everything, he declares that he's not stuck in there with them; they're stuck in there with him. Which
he's like Taz.
Well, I was thinking Rorschach from Watchmen. That's a famous line from Watchmen, which I almost think had to be intentional.
That is the difference between you and I. I go to wrestling, you go right back to comic books.
Oh, but yeah, and then Payback. Now it is interesting because Payback is not your standard supervillain. He is like Super Punisher.
Yeah,
and delightfully, he claims to be a Christian, although he only cares about certain portions of Scripture and not so much about forgiveness and things like that.
I was going to make a joke, but I chose not to.
Okay, well, there you go. But yeah. So I mean, that's an interesting dynamic there. And then we meet the assistant warden who seems to actually care about the humanity of the people there. He kicks a guy out before he can even interview for the new captain of violent crimes position for basically saying, oh yeah, who cares if I get to I don't even need a dental plan. I just want a chance to watch these guys kill each other.
Isn't that how they handle one of the issues with you can fill in the actual specific details here, but isn't there a bit in the book where they have to deal with one of the super criminals, and the way Brody handles it is he just lets him in the gen pop and they just kill him?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's Payback.
Yeah,
because and when it starts out, Brody is not. One thing that, and because you gave her a 100-word limit, I really can't blame Fancy for this, but Fancy didn't really note that when we meet Brody, he is in charge of guards at a non-superpowered prison, and during a fight in the cafeteria, he picks up a rather large shard of glass and just stabs one of the prisoners.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you, as somebody who has worked in correctional healthcare for nigh on 10 plus years, you are not allowed to pick up paraphernalia and jam it into another inmate.
Yeah, I figured that. I mean, obviously, I defer to your expertise, but I was thinking that that's probably frowned upon.
Yeah,
and that's why he is in need of a job when Warden Devlin decides to offer him the job at San Tib. So that was pretty interesting because I mean, like I said, I don't have a lot of real life experience with this stuff, but a lot of what I saw in Corrective Measures definitely matched what I've seen in TV and movies and comics over the years about how life in prison is perceived, at least. And I thought it was interesting right off the bat to give us the guy who looks like the main character, and he just killed a dude, not even really in self-defense.
yeah, he did. So yeah, this first issue, which kind of deals with, we have a prison captain who is in need of another job after he violently murders another prisoner, and it's like, all right, come here and work in this superpowered prison. I'm selecting you not only because you're easily manipulated in the sense of you're desperate, and I need a desperate man that I can control, but also you have some creative ideas on how to deal with these, lunatics with superpowers, and that's what this job calls for. So he has like a wife and a kid at home, and there's the this job is far away and it will require you to move, and we're settled here, and the wife is almost hysterically supportive.
Oh yeah, there's no like, wow, this could be dangerous. She goes, it's a big change, but you could use this.
Yeah, this is absolutely fantasy wife. She is supportive. She is understanding. She is absolutely wonderful. Presents no dramatic tension whatsoever. She is the most fictional character in the book, filled with superheroes. Anything else about issue number 1?
I mean, hey, I do give them credit for not going total cliche with her.
If you insist. All right, issue number 2. All right, here's what Fancy tells us. Fancy says, Inmate rivalries intensify as Connor manipulates both prisoners and guards to expand his influence. Payback, a towering force of destruction, begins asserting dominance over the prison's hierarchy. Warden Brody struggles to keep order while uncovering signs of a deeper hidden agenda behind San Tiburon. As alliances form and betrayals take shape, a full-scale riot looms on the horizon.
Yeah. Yeah, that's more or less what happened. Jason decides to go in and get control of Payback, or try to get control of Payback. The warden asks him to, and I think that is, he says Payback wants to take on violent criminals, so let's give him the chance. And he just lets all the inmates with various weapons go after Payback in the shower.
Yep. And poorly for Payback.
Yeah. I mean, and we get, the guy, I thought the story was going to be about, the conflict between Payback and Jason, and Payback is beaten to a bloody pulp and does not wake up for the rest of the series.
Yeah. Which is weird because, like I said, like you look at the cover, the impression you're going to get is this whole story is the conflict between Payback and Brody, and it's so not. It goes in so many other directions. So issue number 3, moving this right along, a violent riot erupts, driven by Connor's mental control and Payback's brute force. Guards are overwhelmed as chaos spreads. Brody fights to maintain order while discovering classified experiments taking place inside San Tiburon. As the prison teeters on the edge, external forces watching from the shadows begin to make their moves, signaling the unrest is just the beginning.
Can I make a confession here?
Yes, sir.
I don't know who Connor is.
Yeah, without looking at the book. Here, okay. Let me.
I don't remember Connor.
As fun as this is to read from Fancy's notes and compare them to my actual experience, here's what I got out of this book. Once you get past the stuff with Payback, there's basically 2 or 3 other like per issue stories. The last one actually is the most impactful to me, and it's the one where, because it reminded me of Oz.
Okay.
They have like visitors visiting the, like luminaries visiting the prison, and they don't want them to mix with the Muslims. There's a particular Muslim inmate that is, and again, it's just right at Oz. He's a bit troublesome, and they don't want him making a ruckus. So Brody goes down there like, you need to deal with him, like quiet him up, and you can't do what you did with Payback. You can't just send him into Gen Pop and hope they beat the shit out of him, and you can't put him in segregation. This is somebody people are watching. Again, this is I don't know if you ever watched Oz, but there was one of the big stars of the show was there was a Muslim leader, and he blew something up, and that's why he was in prison. And Saeed, I think.
Okay, so not the Wizard of Oz.
Nope.
Okay. I'm with
Oswald State Penitentiary is what it stood for.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you knew.
No, not haven't watched that one.
Okay. So anyway, they always had to treat him with kid gloves because he was not a political prisoner as such, but he was definitely a person of interest. And if bad things happened to him, it was going to get to the media and make the prison look bad. Like, there were no good answers when it came to him. So it was basically, as long as he's not actively fucking up, just leave him alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the way they wrote this Muslim character. And the conflict is that there's a Nazi contingent, and they're always pinching and tickling each other, like you do in a prison. So his way of handling, so again, he can't just throw him into segregation. He can't just like let another group just beat the shit out of him, and now he's in the infirmary. He actually has to try to deal with this diplomatically. And so he goes down there, and he goes to the Muslims, and he's like, behave, people are visiting. And the Muslims like, no, just no. We're going to keep being Muslims and being real public about it and real bratty. How do you like them apples? Brody's just like, ugh, my life. And he goes to the Nazis, does the same routine, gets about the same answer. So he sits both the Muslim and the Nazi down at a table and says, like, Israel and Palestine, fucking work something out here. Deal with it. And by the end of it, basically, he's just like, you know, figure out a way to behave yourselves while this is happening, because if anything happens, your whole group's going to get punished in ways you haven't even imagined, or something along those lines. And they're just like, fine, and then the issue ends. I don't know if it's the book I have or what, but I was like, this can't be the end of the book. There has to be more here, and there wasn't.
Yeah, they did do a sequel, but yeah, I was surprised. One thing I didn't look at because I knew there was a volume 2. I just assumed it continued. I didn't know that was the end of the series because it didn't. It felt like, okay, we have reached the end of 6 issues, not we've finished our story.
Did they? Does the sequel deal with this at all, or does it pick up a new story?
I don't know. I have not read that one yet.
Oh, okay. Because I also didn't realize there was a Corrective Measures too.
Yeah, there is a volume 2. There was the story in the 3rd issue that kind of jumped out at me was the guy who and this was kind of a creative take on established comic elements where they have a guy in there who's a tech-based criminal.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, yeah, guys, I don't have any powers. You don't need to put me in here with these people. You don't need to put a power dampener on me. And he's scared to death. And there's a rather large inmate who has rather crude designs on him. And by the next morning, he kills himself.
Yep.
So, and the warden made it clear to him that he did not care what happened to him.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. And that's where we get the hint that there may be, a little something going on, secret experiments or whatever. The other person we meet in the 3rd issue is the doctor, who, kind of an interesting character.
Yeah.
She's kind of, overwhelmed by what's going on. She seems to really, care about taking care of the patients, even though she also is like, oh great, I saved another murderer's life.
Right.
And then there's kind of a tense meeting between her and Jason. I don't know, she gets I know they have a disagreement, and she says, go on, let me remember you like this, leaving my office. That's the best thing.
That was a good line.
Although by the end of the series, then she's kind of flirting with him.
Yeah. I know that you're not into like the Grant Morrisons or,
Oh, I love Grant Morrison.
Oh, who's the one you don't like? The one that writes all like the bleak stuff, like the
Garth Ennis.
That's the one. I take 2.
Yeah.
I know you don't like the Garth Ennises of the world, or the what's his face? The one that I like that I talk about with Jesse. Not All Robots.
Mark Russell.
Mark Russell. You're not a huge Mark Russell guy.
Yeah, but we did Billionaire Island. I read Prez.
You did. And then he wrote, the one about Jesus Christ that I want to make Jesse read that you swore you would never read. Yeah,
that one's not. I'm not the target audience.
You are not. And so you tend to like your comic books to be a bit more hopeful. Not necessarily lighthearted. You can read heavy stuff, but you don't necessarily like bleak and cynical. So where did Corrective Measures line up for you?
I found parts of it interesting. The Tweety, the guy who was like the first inmate that was hoping for parole, I found that pretty interesting. Because it seemed like for all intents and purposes, he did what he was supposed to do. He was really trying to get out, and they're just like, "Hey, you're a super criminal. We're not letting you out." And then he plots his escape. That was another one.
Goes. If you don't give people a viable alternative to get where they want, they'll go back to the non-viable ways of getting what they want.
Yeah. Which again is kind of a theme I'd seen before, but I thought it was well done in this. So I like that. It can be bleak or dark if that's what the story calls for. But that was another one that kind of it felt like that issue was going to be a vignette, and then it ends on a cliffhanger with him trying to escape and intersects with Brody and all that other stuff. So that was another one where there wasn't a lot of flow. I'm like, and not that comics can't do a story, then introduce another story, but it just felt like we had this whole shift. Like, here's this guy.
But you can do that when you have an indeterminate run.
Yeah.
Like, I remember reading like X-Men comics, and you would be in the middle of a story and they would introduce another story and they would drop what they were doing and they would come back to it 6 issues later.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with 3, 4, or another one, Fantastic Four, like the stories were all over the place. And yes, the stuff would get resolved, but over a series of issues, sometimes you'd have a one shot and sometimes you'd have stuff that got resolved 100 issues later.
Yeah.
It's
I just felt like
you really
Tweety
can't do that
should
with
have been-
6 issues.
Yeah, I just felt like Tweety should have at least been like shown up in some of the early issues and kind of build up to it, as opposed to, okay, it's Brody and Payback. Oh no, wait, it's Brody and this new guy who doesn't have powers. No, he's dead. Okay, who's this Tweety guy? Oh, it's Tweety and Brody.
I would say the narrative is a bit muddled.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I make my one criticism, because I think otherwise it's an entertaining. It's definitely a good idea. I think in the hands of a better writer, they could have had some real fun with this. Like, I would like to see this same book, but done by a Mark Russell or a Garth Ennis or a Grant Morrison, or somebody who can really has a talent for developing beefy narratives. I think could have done some interesting stuff with this. Like Mark Russell, I think, because Mark Russell has a take on everything and he makes Ronnie Adams cry. Mark Russell would have really taken like a prison full of superheroes and what does that look like? What questions are we asking? And gone some places with it that I think would have been interesting. Here, I think it's only as good as the writer's intelligence, and I'm not just entirely sure this writer had the firmest grasp on the material.
Yeah, the pitch, supervillains in a prison. That's a good pitch right there. I mean, it may not get you an immediate green light like Will Ferrell as a NASCAR driver, but that's a strong concept. And and they take comic book tropes and work them in here. They take prison tropes and work them in here, and it's a good foundation. But yeah, it doesn't seem to get where all it can go, and I think muddled is a good way to describe. Like I don't know if they had 6 issues planned out, or if they're just like, hey, this is a cool idea, let's get started and see where it goes. So I say it's almost like they made it up as they went along, but I mean, a lot of writing is made up as it goes along. But
so I asked Fancy, I said, in segment 3 of my podcast, I want to discuss themes and craft elements of the book. And here's what Fancy said. Power and control. The battle for dominance within San Tiburon mirrors broader struggles of authority and corruption. The prison becomes a battleground where both physical strength and psychological manipulation dictate survival. Morality in a corrupt system. Brody's struggle reflects the moral dilemmas of law enforcement within a deeply broken system. Can justice exist in a prison designed for exploitation? Superpowers versus human nature. Unlike traditional superhero narratives, Corrective Measures focuses on how individuals with abilities behave when stripped of their freedoms, revealing their true nature. And then paranoia and psychological warfare. Connor's manipulation, the secret experiments, and the hidden agendas all contribute to a tense, suspenseful atmosphere where no one is fully in control. Craft-wise, the book's art style is dark and gritty, fitting the brutal prison setting. The writing focuses on dialogue-driven tension with multi-layered character dynamics that elevate it beyond typical action story. Yeah, this isn't quite Guardian Devil, but oi, this is a wordy tomb.
Oh, Guardian Devil. Yeah, sorry, it took me a minute to... Kevin Smith, Daredevil.
Kevin Smith likes the sound of his own writing.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed Guardian Devil immensely. Sorry, you got me distracted. I mean, I do agree the art style kind of fits. It does fit the tone very well. There's some places where it's not my cup of tea, but I always find it hard to criticize artists because my stick figures are not very strong. Sure. But yeah, it absolutely fits the fits the tone and everything like that. Like I said, the ideas were great. I just think the execution didn't quite rise to that level.
Okay.
But I'm curious enough. I'm a completist. I'm going to read the second volume. I'm going to say I'm going to read the second volume. I don't know. I've still got that issue of Scooby-Doo team up with Green Arrow and Green Lantern that I haven't gotten around to. So you never know. Yeah. But yeah, it is my intent to do that. Tweety, I found pretty interesting. I like I said, my main issue with that was not so much the story as the way he was kind of just introduced suddenly and then dropped out. Brody, I kind of had a hard time getting a handle on him. He, toward the end, he goes and apologizes to Payback, and then Payback starts to stir. and like he's like, "Well, I shouldn't have done that to you. You know, you're a man of God." And I'm like, I don't know why he felt that. You know what I mean? Like I didn't see anything. I mean, not that you have to explain everything. Like Jason thought this and then felt that, but it was just kind of out of nowhere.
There's something to be said for show don't tell.
Exactly. Yeah, and they didn't tell, but they didn't show.
All right, let's move on to the movie. Corrective Measures is a 2022 American superhero film written, produced, and directed by Sean O'Reilly. And if you don't know who Sean O'Reilly is, then you should. His filmography is the following. In 2023, he's a voice on Heroes of the Golden Masks, which is a Canadian animated film directed by Sean O'Reilly.
Oh, how about that?
He is a voice on Howard Lovecraft and the Kingdom of Madness, which is a direct-to-video Canadian movie.
And an Arcana property.
Yes. He's a voice on The Legend of Halawayan, a lot of Canadian stuff here.
And that is also an Arcana property. I believe, I'm trying to look up. I believe he is a higher up at Arcana. Oh, he's the owner and operator of Arcana.
Well, that makes sense.
There you go.
In 2015, so he's he has a voice role on Pixies, which is a Canadian animated fantasy film released by Arcana Studios.
There you
go. Movie credits. He is a producer of A Dangerous Man, starring Steven Seagal. He was the producer of Clockwork Girl, another Canadian animated film.
Another Arcana venture.
He was the producer on Playdate, which is an upcoming American action film directed by Luke Greenfield and written by Neil Gaiman. It stars Kevin James, Alan Ritson, Sarah Chalke, Alan Tudyk, Stephen Root, and Isla Fisher. Probably not something we're going to be doing on Damn You Hollywood. He's got some video game credits.
Fun cast.
He's got some TV credits. He's worked on Entourage, Kagagi the Raven, Psych on USA Network, and Spike TV's Red Lotus. Comic book credits. He's the co-creator and writer of Clockwork Girl, editor of Dragon's Lair. Let's see. Creator of the Gwai, creator of the Cade, compendium educator. I'm so tired. Editor of Kiss, Pixies, Paradox, Seven, writer and editor. Oh, there was a Seven comic book. And then the Steam Engines of Oz. So that's Sean O'Reilly.
Probably not The Prison.
Probably. Nope. For fuck's sake. Anywho, starring Bruce Willis. Yes, Bruce Willis in his make a zillion movies because I'm about to die phase.
Yeah, I remember we did a triple feature a while back, and I was that was before we knew what was going on with Bruce Willis. Although I still say, even if he wasn't, having serious health concerns, if someone offered me 6, maybe 7 figures to show up for a few days and be myself, I would not turn them down.
And be sitting the entire time.
Yeah, well, he's
he's
more of a thinker than a fighter.
That's more. Yep, that's what I was thinking when I saw him in Die Hard. All right, starring Bruce Willis
in this movie.
And Michael Rooker. It is based on the graphic novel, which we just talked about. It is O'Reilly's debut in a live-action feature film. It was released by Tubi and in select theaters and VOD on April 29th of 2022.
So if you want to watch it, your choices are Tubi or not Tubi. That's the question.
It has a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is higher than some Marvel movies of late.
I'm surprised by that.
Anyway, the film debuted, as I said, April 29th. Corrective Measures is one of the last films to star Willis, who retired from acting because he was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia, and it shows in this movie. Okay. All right, so and I don't say that like insultingly. Like he looked like he was struggling.
Well, he was also a powerful psychic whose powers had been limited.
But he was fucking a lawyer. All right. Moving on. So I have the production history and notes for the movie here. While the movie retained the core concepts of the comic, San Tiburon is a high security prison with superpowered criminals. It altered several characters and plot lines.
Oh
The
yeah.
film, yeah, it did. The film had a limited budget, and it shows, leading to a mix of practical effects and CGI for superpowers. And then, we just talked about Bruce Willis. So the movie goes like this. San Tiburon prison houses the world's most dangerous superpowered criminals. Ward Devlin, a cold and calculating leader, attempts to control the inmates, including Payback, a near indestructible powerhouse. When a mysterious new prisoner, the Lobe, who is a telepath, arrives, power struggles erupt between inmates and corrupt guards. Conspiracies surrounding secret experiments come to light, leading to a violent uprising. Payback leads a destructive riot, forcing Devlin to take drastic measures. A final battle scene sees betrayal, chaos, and prisons left in shambles. The story ends with key survivors escaping or taking control, leaving for future conflicts. Yeah, right off the bat, there's no focus on Brody in this. This is about Michael. There's no heroes in this movie. Had you noticed that? Michael Rooker is the star. He's the actual warden of this because Fancy got this wrong. Fancy said that Bruce Willis was the warden. No, he's like the criminal boss.
Yeah, and also Fancy said the Lobe, that's Bruce Willis's character, was a new arrival. No, he's been there. It was Payback and Diego Diaz.
Right.
Who, I don't want to be unkind, but I don't know why Diego was in this movie.
Yeah, if
you remove him from the movie, the only thing he does is provide a link between Tweety and the Lobe.
Well, he's supposed to be like a sympathetic POV character.
He's supposed to be, yeah. Granted, yeah. I mean, and that is an interesting concept that they didn't delve into. He doesn't have an offensive power. He's an empath. His power hurts him more than it does anybody else, and makes him.
Which, in the hands of better writers, would have been an interesting story.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are. Here, I'll give you an example. Astro City. Have I ranted and raved about Astro City on here before?
No, but go ahead and do so.
Fantastic series. It was when I was like a teenager. Wizard magazine would gush about it all the time, and I'm like, we get it, Astro City, whoop-de-doo. By the time I read it, it's better than they made it out to be. Kurt Busiek writes it, and it's, instead of it being like deconstruction, what if superheroes lived in the real world? It's what if real people lived in the superhero world. So there's recurring characters, but he goes in on these vignettes on characters. There's a whole storyline about people who have superpowers but don't want to be heroes or villains. What do they do?
Okay.
There's one, he did one about a superpowered dog that will break your heart. And then somebody said, yeah, but what would a superpowered cat be like? So there's a one-off issue that just has a superpowered cat that just kind of does its own thing. It's fantastic. And it does the kind of things that we're talking about. Like, it will be interesting to see it in this. Like, yeah, absolutely. Diego is the point of view character. He's sympathetic, but after the initial part where he meets the Lobe and saves him from Payback, he's still in the movie, but he doesn't really do anything.
Yeah. So this whole movie has, like I said, no heroes, no sympathetic characters. There's two basic plot lines. There's Michael Rooker's attempt to have Bruce Willis transfer all his monies that he's gotten illegally to Michael Rooker. And a lot of this movie is sort of based on Michael Rooker making that moisture happen. Then there's the assistant warden who wants to be promoted, and now I know that you are a progressive, liberal, tree-hugging, communist. So
yes, liberal is the way most people describe me.
Progressive.
Yes, that too.
Right. So just hear me out on this. When they drew up her character, and they wrote out what the character, this dear actress, who's the actress? This dear actress.
Come on, Mark, didn't you research this ahead of time?
Shut up your face.
That's fair.
This dear actress, this poor sweet actress. Is she not in the cast list? What the fuck? Bruce Willis, Michael Rooker, Dan Payne.
She was a lady who worked on craft services and just happened to be there. Oh, Celia Aloma
is not in the cast list.
She doesn't have a picture on her IMDb entry.
Oh my god.
She was in The Man in the High Castle.
Okay.
Swan Song with Mahershala Ali.
Okay.
Yeah. She has 10 credits.
Terrific.
She was on an episode of The Babysitter's Club. She played cop number 1.
She is not in the cast list on the Wikipedia page. Not even a little bit.
Yeah. It took me a little while to realize she was the assistant warden, because when they introduced her, and this is not meant to be sexist, this is how she was presented, she was like his secretary.
Yeah, well, that's what I was getting to. So her major talent, her big character, is that she's a black woman.
And she can put up with the warden's crap, to be fair.
Okay. And it is my understanding, as the movie writes it, just as the movie writes it, that she should be the best person for the job of the warden when Michael Rooker steps down.
Yes.
Because she's a black woman.
I just assumed it was because she was the assistant warden. But for whatever reason, he doesn't want her to be. And he
doesn't want her. Well, that actually made some sense. He doesn't want her to. He doesn't necessarily want her to see what he's doing in terms of trying to steal from Bruce Willis.
Yeah. But then there's no reason for Brody. I mean, the line, and I feel bad because, I mean, obviously this is not a good thing to say, but Brody's not the brightest light in the Christmas tree in this. And at one point when the warden just says out of nowhere, "Oh, Brody's up for being warden too," and the assistant warden storms out, Rooker's like, "Well, what's she mad about?" And he goes, "Well, I just took her job and she thinks I'm retarded."
Yeah.
And I'm like, not a good choice of words, but fair, because
accurate.
Yeah, he's not manipulative or capable or at all impressive.
Not in any way the way they wrote him in the comic.
Yeah, he's an afterthought.
Yeah. So, like I said, this whole movie is about the prisoners trying to create enough of a distraction to possibly get out. Payback is way minimized in this.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they don't give much to Payback.
Although he's not in a coma, he does more than he does in the comics.
Sure.
Also does not seem at all broken up about his family being killed in the opening scene.
Yeah.
Seems pretty chill. He says he's mad, but...
Yeah, so they don't give a lot to Payback. They give almost nothing to Brody. This movie is about this entitled black woman not getting the job she wants. But really, this movie is about Michael Rooker ripping off Bruce Willis.
Or trying to.
Yeah. That is this whole goddamn movie.
Well, and you've got probably the best asset. I did not realize. I mean, I knew Bruce Willis and Michael Rooker were on it. I'm like, okay, Rooker's probably going to be the warden. I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Is Bruce Willis going to be Payback? You know, or is anytime they mentioned a character I hadn't seen, I'm like, oh, is that going to be Bruce Willis? And eventually it was the Loeb. But the one that surprised me and got me excited and that I felt they didn't do anything with is Tom Cavanagh, was Tweety.
He's like the best part of this movie.
Yeah. I never watched the show Ed much, but I'm like, oh yeah, Tom Cavanagh, he's the guy that was that nice guy on that NBC show and did all this.
Oh, he's Reverse Flash on the
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Then he goes on the Flash, becomes the villain and a hero and an ally, plays 700 versions of the same guy, and absolutely devours the scenery when he's being Reverse Flash.
He is some of the best. He's some of the best stuff on the Flash show.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm like, oh, dude, Tom Cavanagh's in this. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then they do. I mean, we talked about they just kind of introduced Tweety really quick in the comic. In this, they make him like he's kind of like the Morgan Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
From Shawshank Redemption character in it.
You better get busy. Get busy living, or get busy dying.
And then out of the blue, he's up for parole. He mentions that he was one of the first prisoners, but they say in his parole hearing he's been there for 10 years, and it's stated earlier in the movie that the prison's been open for 20 years. But whatever. So he goes before the parole board, which reminds me of Logan's Run for some reason. And they're like, he's like, oh, I've learned the value of community here. And they're like, oh, no, you don't really do anything. And he gets mad and then he decides he's going to escape. Whereas in the comic, it's like, I did everything they wanted me to do. I went through everything and they're not going to let me out. It doesn't matter what I do. And that's why he snaps. And in this, they're like, well, you're not really part of a community. And he starts yelling, I matter, I matter. And Tom Cavanagh starts chewing on the scenery, but there's no, it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah. The movie
And then
lacks a bit of focus.
Yeah, it's kind of, it has that in common with the comic.
And Michael Rooker gets away with it. That's the other really funny thing. Michael Rooker is like the real villain of this entire story, which is fine because like it's like a Suicide Squad kind of a thing where Viola Davis is the real villain of Suicide Squad. She is the evil mastermind government agent forcing these poor beleaguered criminals who are just trying to do their time into a mission that will surely get them killed. And if it doesn't get them killed and they try any shenanigans, she'll kill them anyway. She's the villain of the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Not the giant starfish, not the Joker, not Hoogity Boogity Lady, fucking Viola Davis. Oh, sorry, the Enchantress. Ugh.
I know what you meant.
So here, Michael Rooker is kind of playing that same character. He's evil, racist, shitty warden, complete with straw hat.
Mm-hmm.
It's great, except that he isn't defeated. He gets Bruce Willis to transfer the money to him. He gets in a convertible and he drives away. That's the end of the movie.
No, he was defeated.
How?
Bruce Willis switched minds with him.
Oh, I missed that detail.
And this is the part that I didn't get when he asks him for a Wi-Fi password to transfer the money. Apparently, he had the ability to shut down all the power nullifiers, and I totally missed that. I'm not saying it wasn't explained, but I didn't see it.
That part I got.
Okay, and then he says something to him like, "Well, there's one more power I have that you don't know about." And
I remembered that, and then I didn't think they followed up on it.
No, I forget the exact details of it, but he switched bodies with him, and then he knocked him out. That's why when he goes and the guy I can't the big guy, Rufus or something like that.
Sure.
Big dude that was like the Loeb's right-hand man. When he gets paroled, the warden picks him up and drives off with him. So Bruce Willis was going along with it the whole time. He transferred his whole fortune to his new identity.
Oh,
okay, but what I had a problem with there is, so when we first hear about the Loeb, Tweety is like, oh, this guy's the worst of the worst. We don't ever want him getting out. He's scary. And then Diego is fascinated by him, and the Loeb asks a favor of Diego, and I never saw that followed up on. I don't know why the Loeb had an interest in Diego.
Yeah.
I could have missed it. But
that's kind of okay then. At least Michael Rooker, because then what happens to Michael Rooker is now he's in Bruce Willis's body, and they put him in like a weird interdimensional segregation. Yeah,
it's like solitary confinement, but time passes much slower there than it does for the rest of us. But so we were told that the Loeb was terrible. Tom Cavanagh told us that, but all we saw was that he's an older man who has lost his abilities and isn't such a bad guy.
Yes, it's Bruce Willis very sleepily delivering slow dialogue on a bunk.
But he was drugged, Mark. He was drugged.
Sure.
But yeah, so that and then the other thing that they did in this, which wasn't bad but just felt unnecessary, is there was a whole lot of world building in this. Like, we have this whole thing about there were villains and there was a radiation pulse and Australia has sunken into the ocean and all this. And I'm like, in the comic, they were just like, there's super powered people and the ones that go to jail go here.
Which is all you needed.
But let me ask you, since did you catch the post-credit scene?
No.
Oh man. Well, they set it up for a sequel. So there was a guy who during the riot toward the end was like eating someone's leg.
Yeah.
And his name was Zed. And I didn't know his name was Zed until the annoying newscasters came back and they said, well, there was an escape at San Tiburon and an inmate named Zed is on the loose, and our cameraman captured this footage of him in his final moments. And so the cameraman, I know there's a zoom on a camera, but he's obviously standing near this guy slobbering and walking through high grass, and
Mm-hmm.
then starts yelling no, and the guy attacks him. And they're like, and it turns out Zed was infected with an experimental virus. That's right. He's a zompire.
Super. Well, Evan, let's talk about some of the differences, if we haven't already covered it, from the book to the movie here. Key differences. Warden Brody, who was not the warden, versus Warden Devlin. The comics, Brody is a conflicted, morally ambiguous character, whereas Devlin is more of a traditional authority figure. I would say that that's true. Brody is actually the star of the comic book. The star of this one is Michael Rooker, and Michael Rooker is just kind of a dick.
Yeah, but I mean, he's basically doing what you, if you get Michael Rooker in a movie,
Mm-hmm.
he's giving you the Michael Rooker special. He's got a Southern accent. He's saying weird and funny stuff and being a jerk.
Yep, he's doing his character from Guardians of the Galaxy, but with less charisma.
Yep.
Okay. We have Connor versus the Lobe. The movie merges Connor's role with a new character, the Lobe, altering the power dynamics and psychological warfare elements.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Connor's in Volume 2 because I still don't remember Connor.
That's fair. Action and tone. The comic is grittier with more intense psychological and physical conflicts. The movie leans towards a standard action thriller. Okay, first of all, this is not thrilling. I was going to go with action comedy with fewer deep character moments. Yeah, this is Michael Rooker and Tom Cavanagh just having a grand old time with a shitty script. This, they didn't phone it in, but they know the script is garbage, and they gladly took the paycheck and were like, all right, these guys from Arcana are not going to, boss us around. And we can really, actors like to play. Something I talk about with Robert all the time. You don't get into acting because you're, a super serious person. You do because you want to play. You want to have fun with personality. And there is Michael Rooker and Tom Cavanagh going, we kind of just have a sandbox here to play in. As long as we hit our marks and know our lines, we can really go for it here. Who the fuck is going to tell us no? Not Sean Patrick O'Malley, whatever the hell his name is. They just be like, yeah, that's great. What else has this movie got besides your guys' performance?
Yeah. I mean, Cavanagh does everything he can do with it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's there's not, when he's on screen, he's the guy you're paying attention to. He delivers every line. Not his fault that the lines don't always make sense.
I love when he finally got his electric powers back. That was some good shit.
Yeah. And is this getting too far ahead? Can we talk about the set and the budget?
Yeah, go ahead.
This did not feel like a super ultra max prison.
No.
And again, I don't know about this, but the feeling I got was this is a county holding center.
Yeah.
I mean, they just like the cafeteria. And I understand, I think in the comic, they said something like there were 29 superpowered inmates. And I'm like, well, haha, that's not true. And then I counted the shower scene where they all jump payback and there were 23. And I'm like, okay, fine. Maybe the writer and artist do know more about this than I do. But so I get that they wouldn't need a huge facility, but there were less than 10 seats in the cafeteria. And I understand they probably,
and everything is a tight shot so you can't see how big this place is.
Yeah, but I mean, and you're more in touch with the craft than I am, but I mean, there's ways to make it look bigger, right? I mean,
they did none of those things. They were like, know that they were like, there was no imagination in terms of how to shoot this thing to make it look different than it was. They more look like, well, we're limited, so we're going to work within those limitations.
And there was some line that made it sound like they were still building the real prison. Like they said something about the new one was going to open or something, but they never leaned into that. There were a lot of ideas that, I mean, it's almost like they shot it, they changed their minds, and it was like, oh crap, Tubi needs this next week. We got to go with what we have.
We're on a deadline. Finish.
I mean, I don't mean to. You know me. I don't like to crap on people. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know why you work with us.
Yeah, I don't think anybody sets out to make a bad movie.
No,
but
this is clearly
it didn't work.
This is clearly a studio trying to create synergistic products. They don't want them to be bad, but
Yeah.
they've got 2 shillings and a halfpenny to do this stuff with. There's only so much they can do.
Yeah, I mean they had. I mean, Michael Rooker and Tom Cavanagh. That's not a bad place to start. And you had Bruce Willis's name in the credits. You had a great concept, but it just I feel like that they could have focused on some more stuff. I get that you wanted Diego as a point of view character, but like I don't like in the riot he's in the medical unit with the doctor who was much sunnier and more chipper than her character in the in the comic,
yeah.
and like I just don't know why he was there. Like I know why he was there early in the movie, but he didn't do anything at the end.
Yeah, like I said, this script, again, you're talking about like a 4th-rate publishing company, in a 10th-rate fucking movie studio, putting together what amounts to a straight to DVD movie. No one was paying that close. It's not like there was an executive doing a lot of studio notes here.
Yeah,
they this is not one of those movies meant to podcast about. This is one of those movies meant to watch late at night for free. While you're waiting for your sports bets to pay off or not.
But I mean, unless except for Kavanaugh and stuff, I've seen movies that weren't necessarily good or great that I enjoyed, and it's just like I could see where they could have done some stuff with this.
Sure,
it wasn't just doomed from the start, or maybe I don't know, but I mean there was some stuff that could have been good, and it just like they didn't maximize what they had. Like forget what they couldn't do with a small set or anything, but like they didn't make some of this stuff pay off that they did have.
Talent, truly talented filmmakers can take chicken shit and give you chicken salad. And most people will take the chicken shit and kind of just dress it up, but it's still chicken shit. Just very pretty chicken shit. Or chicken shit.
There you go. Yeah. So I mean, they had some people with ability. They had some good ideas. It just didn't come together. I mean, it's not something that I'm going to be like, yeah, well, it had its moments.
This is not the worst thing that we've reviewed, either the movie or the book. This is still better than Cowboys and Aliens.
The comic,
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no, I've watched worse.
So boring. This was not boring. I was not bored by this.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right. I mean, it's not it's not hopeless. It just doesn't. I don't know. They could have done more.
They could have done more. Well, that is our review of Corrective Measures, the book, Corrective Measures, the movie, and Corrective Measures, the flamethrower, because the kids just love it. Evan is.
I can't wait for the musical.
Yes. Evan is hard to schedule. And so he will be back in April. And we will be talking A History of Violence, which I've had that book on my shelf for a very long time now. I've never seen the movie, so this will be a fun experience.
Oh, wait. It's violence? I thought it was violins like Umbrella Academy. Okay. No, we're still good.
Thank you.
I didn't mean to string you along.
You got any more in there?
No, I'm good.
Are you sure?
You may continue with your podcast.
Cello. All right. So April 12th, comic strip, A History of Violence. We will have fun. As for what I did this past week and what I will do the next week and all the weeks after, Monday we talked Love Hurts. Thursday we were doing Black History Month stuff again. We did Above the Rim, Coach Carter, and He Got Game. And if you're wondering what the theme was, it was basketball, you dummies.
Love Coach Carter.
Yes, great movie. Sunday, after I deal with Captain America Brave New World, allegedly we are talking The West Wing Season 2. Monday, we will have to talk about, unfortunately, Captain America Brave New World. God help us all.
I'm looking forward to it.
You look forward to everything. Thursday, we're talking John Singleton movies, Poetic Justice, Higher Learning, I Just Wanted to Be an Engineer, and Baby Boy. And then Friday night, I will be doing another Indie Ciders episode with Harry Broadhurst. We will be talking NXT Vengeance Day and whatever else is going on in the world of wrestling. So that is it for me for this week and next week. Evan, go ahead and tell us where your blog is located and what you're writing about these days and all the stuff you do with Jesse.
Okay, well, you can find my blog at *51. You actually have to spell out asterisk. I'm not sure you can put an asterisk in the website. I mean, in the web address. *51.blogspot.com. I mangled that one good. And I only have one more amalgam issue to go. And every show I'm on, I'm like, I'm almost done with the amalgam issues, but still haven't. Life keeps happening. It's weird.
Fucking life, man.
So I'm getting there. I did in honor of Captain America: Brave New World that you're so excited about. I did a free Comic Friday post about when Sam Wilson was Captain America in the all new, all different Avengers, and Miles Morales inexplicably was part of the team.
I have one question, and I want a yes or no answer.
Okay.
Did the all new, all different Marvel ever make any money?
I don't know. I know you wanted a yes or no, but what do you mean by the all new, all different Marvel?
Did Black Captain America actually sell a lot of comic books?
That I don't know. But my problem, since you asked, with Black Captain America, female Thor, and Black female Iron Man was not with any of those characters. Like the characters, like the stories. If you've had 50 years of Iron Man being a rich white guy, why would you replace him with another rich white guy? I mean, that's not DEI.
Why would you replace him at all?
Well, fair point. But I mean, everybody gets replaced from time to time.
That's true.
My problem with those three stories was they happened one right after the other. I don't know that it was like an initiative, like let's make everybody more diverse, but it sure seemed like that. And there's not. I mean, Sam Wilson is the logical successor to Captain America.
I don't disagree.
He just is. But when you've got Thor is now a woman, which was a very interesting story, and enjoyed that immensely. And then you've got, a teenage Black female Iron person. It feels like that's your goal. I'm not saying it is. I thought all those stories to certain degrees were well done, but it feels like that's your goal.
I hear what you're saying.
Instead of telling a good story.
Had they sprinkled these in over time and not everything is new and different and the Hulk is Korean now, sure. But that's exactly what they did. They went the Hulk's Korean, the Iron Man's a black girl, Captain America is a black guy, and Thor's a dainty woman with cancer. And everyone went,
she is not dainty.
Jane was dainty.
Jane was dainty. Jane as Thor was not. But anyway,
no.
yeah.
Calm thy tits there, Evan Bevins.
But that was the issue there, was not. Mm-hmm. I think each of those individual stories was fine and made sense, but it was just they all happened at once. It's like, Chris
Bailey once said, you can't invite somebody in, have them run around your house, break all your furniture, and then walk out again and say, what a pleasant evening this was.
However, to be fair, I'm not sure how much furniture was broken, because Thor is Thor. Yeah, Sam's Captain America again, but Steve Rogers is also Captain America and not evil this time. And Tony Stark is Iron Man, and Riri Williams is still there too.
I can't decide what my favorite Death Threat story is from that era. That Captain America turned into Captain Hydra, and everyone sent death threats, or the story, or the bit that came out of not Identity Crisis, Heroes in Crisis, where Wally West was a murderer or something, and everyone was ready to kill Tom King.
That was manslaughter. I mean, and he's the Flash now.
Good takeaway.
Again. Yeah, it's just, I mean, there's stories I don't like, but then I don't read them.
Yes, you are a level-headed adult male.
Well, let's not get carried away. But anyway, so all that to say, yeah, all new, all different. That all new, all different Avengers series was written by Mark Waid, so I enjoyed it. And it only lasted 15 issues anyway, and everything changes in comics and then goes right back to where it was.
Let's ask Fancy. What do you think? How about that?
What's that?
Let's ask Fancy.
Okay. Well, while you're asking Fancy, I will just say I also, in the podcasting realm, do a monthly show with Jesse Starcher called Snap Material, where we talk about the mobile game Marvel Snap. And
they do it with like stripping. So like they lose a game of Snap, one of them has to lose a piece of clothing.
That is not accurate. Did Fancy tell you that?
Maybe.
And when I'm not dodging Mark's calls for podcasts, sometimes I've popped up on Jesse's other shows, Unspoken Issues or Source Material, and you can also find me on a couple episodes over at Magazines and Monsters, where we talk about deliriously fun comics written by Bob Haney, featuring Batman teaming up with all sorts of folks.
The all-new, all-different Marvel initiative from 2015 to 2017 was a mixed bag financially. While some titles performed well initially, the overall initiative led to declining comic book sales and significant backlash from longtime fans. Here's a breakdown of how it fared. Okay, are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
The relaunch followed Secret Wars 2015, which was a major sales success. New #1 issues for characters like the Mighty Thor, who was Jane Foster, the Invincible Iron Man, Riri Williams, and Totally Awesome Hulk, Amadeus Cho, initially sold well due to speculation and collector interest. The first few months saw sales increase, with many books reaching the top 10 on the Diamond Comics charts. Sales decline, and so that was 2015. Sales declined in fan backlash 2016 to 2017. After the initial wave of new readers, many longtime fans dropped books due to dissatisfaction with the changes of classic characters. Legacy characters Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Captain America were replaced by newer, younger, and more diverse heroes, which alienated a portion of the audience.
I always forget that the Hulk was in there. I always use Iron Man, Cap, and Thor as the example, but I forget. So there you've got 3 founding Avengers and a guy everybody thinks was a founding Avenger, all replaced in the same.
The direct market comic book shops suffered as retailers reported declining sales for many of these books. Marvel admits financial struggles, 2017. At the Marvel Retailer Summit in 2017, Marvel's VP of Sales, David Gabriel, acknowledged that the focus on diversity and legacy hero replacement contributed to declining sales. Gabriel stated the fans did not want more diversity or female characters, but later clarified that diversity itself wasn't the problem. Rather, it was the execution and marketing of these changes. Course correction: Marvel Legacy and Fresh Start, 2017 to 2018. Due to declining sales, Marvel pivoted, because of course they did, with Marvel Legacy, bringing back 20 classic versions of characters like Steve Rogers and Bruce Banner. In 2018, Marvel Fresh Start fully reversed many changes, returning focus to the original characters like Tony Stark's Iron Man and Thor Odinson. Bottom line, did it make money? Short term, yes, the first wave of #1s performed well. Long term, no. Sales declined across many titles, leading to a drop in overall revenue. Retailer impact. Many comic book shops struggled during this period, leading to pushback against Marvel's strategy. Conclusion: if it ain't white, it ain't right. That's what Evan Bevins says.
That is not what Evan Bevins says. If you ask me, I think all this was a plot by Connor.
Good takeaway. All right, Evan. Well said. And I think that's where we should end our podcast before I get you into any more trouble with people. So thank you for joining us here on. This is why we only do this a few times a month, people. Thank you for joining us here on Comic Strip. For Evan Bevins, I am suddenly developing an allergy to something. Be well, be safe, and behave.